Setting up the routing using UI Router requires the following steps. First, set up UI Router. You'll need to download the UI Router library, insert the script tag into the index.html file, and set the UI Router module as a dependency in the main module. These steps should seem somewhat familiar since we've used similar steps when setting up to retrieve data in the last module. Once UI Router is set up, then we need to set up the layout view. Identify where the view should appear within the index.html file. Add the UI view directive to that appropriate location in the layout view. Use data-UI-view instead if your IDE does not recognize UI-view. We are then ready to configure the routes. We'll need to identify the desired route states, which we've already done, and then set up each route state in the code. Let's do the first two steps now, then dive deeper into the route configuration step. Here we are back in WebStorm. The first step for setting up the routing is to set up UI Router. We need to locate the JavaScript library that is required to use UI Router. UI Router is available here. Scrolling down, you can see the Getting Started section of the documentation. There are several ways to obtain UI Router. You can click the Download the Release link to download the JavaScript file, or you can pick up the minified version if you prefer. I have already downloaded this file and added it under the JS folder. And before we forget, let's add that file to index.html with a script tag. Be sure to add it after the reference to Angular itself. Next, we'll add UI Router as a dependency. So we'll open app.js and add UI Router here as a dependency. So now we've set up UI Router and it's ready to be used. Now that UI Router is in place, the second step for setting up routing is to set up the layout template. In the sample application, we are defining the layout template in the index.html file. We need to identify where in the layout template we want the view templates to appear. We want them in the body tag. We'll use a div tag with the UI view directive to identify the location of the view templates. So we'll put them here. Depending on the IDE you are using, directives prefixed with ng- may be recognized as valid HTML attributes, but the UI- may not be recognized. If your IDE marks UI-view as a syntax error, you can use data- as a prefix. The data- is the standard prefix for custom HTML attributes and is recognized as valid by most IDEs. WebStorm does not mark the UI view as a syntax error, so we'll leave the data- off. Lastly, let's put the views in a Bootstrap container to improve the look. So that's it. That's all we need to do. We just specify a div tag with the UI-view, and that's where the routing will inject all of the view templates. If we ran the application at this point, it still would not display anything. That's because we have not yet told Angular which view template to put into this container. Let's do that next.